Candy corn is a Halloween classic, and we're going vintage style with it. Welcome to Up All Night DIY. I'm Monica. Thanks for joining me. I'm hanging with my talented buddies, Traci of Traci Vanover Designs and Morena of Morena's Corner Crafts for the Kinda Corny collaboration. You'll find links to their channels as well as the playlist in the description box. I'm making a diorama of vintage-inspired candy corn advertisement, so let's get into it. I'm going to use 1/2 of a cigar box. I've sanded off the finish, bringing it down to the raw wood. I have here the bottom portion of a Dollar Tree foam cone that has been cut in half. This will be the base for the star of the show, Cornelius, the candy corn. I mean, what else would I call him, right? Some model magic. And I loaded this image of an authentic Brock's trick-or-treat bag from back in the day into Photoshop, and I manipulated it to fit my needs. That's our main supplies. So first things first, I want to round off the top of the foam to give it a candy corn shape. So I'm going to grab a handful of clay. I'll condition it by kneading it, and then I'm going to roll it into a ball. I slightly flatten it with my palm, and I'm going to shape it into an arch so that it'll fit onto the top of the cone. This is just a matter of fussing with it until I get it to the right shape and size. I want a wee bit of overhang so that the clay comes over the edge, just a smidge. Right, that'll work. To attach it to the foam, I insert 2 toothpicks into the top of the cone, and then I'm going to push the clay onto it to score the holes. This is to make sure that it's centered before I glue it into place. You know what I'm saying? I'm using some Aleene's tacky glue. I'm going to get a good coat on there before replacing the clay. And I'm just going to pop that right into place, lining up the holes with the toothpicks, and we're good to go. I'm using a pick tool to score the front of the cone so that the clay will stick to it. If you're using a crunchy kind of foam, this isn't necessary, but these Dollar Tree cones are smooth, so I needed to add some texture for the clay to grab onto. And I'm going to roll over the edge of the clay to make sure that it's really well attached. I roll out some clay nice and flat, big enough to cover the cone. Right, so I'm going to center the cone onto the clay, curved side facing down, flat side up. I'm going to trim this a wee bit. I want to get rid of, all the extra clay, anything excess. And here I'm going to trim this off, give it kind of an angle. You feel me? I wrap the clay over the top of the cone. I'm starting at the top, and I'm going to work my way down the sides, and I'm going to smooth it as I go. Rocking it on the table helps to ensure that the clay is well stuck to the foam, and it smooths it too. I'm going to fill in any gaps on the back, and I'll smooth that a wee bit too. I'm not too worried about the back because we're not going to see it. I want to make bite marks up here on the left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a circle fondant cutter to make the teeth marks. I'm just going to press down and scoop it out. I'll fuss with it to smooth it until I'm happy with it, until I think it looks like teeth marks. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think that looks pretty good. What do you think? I'm going to roll a small ball of clay. I'll cut it in half to make the cheeks. Cutting it like this kind of squishes it down, which gives it almost the perfect cheek shape as soon as it's cut. You know what I'm saying? So all I have to do once it's cut is push them into place. I want to apply enough pressure that the clay is going to stick to the other clay without deforming the shape of the cheek. Once it's on there, I roll over the edge of the cheeks with the paintbrush handle to incorporate the cheek with the other clay on the candy corn. Okay, he needs some dimples. I'm just going to take my little ball tool here and push it up into the bottom of his cheeks to give those dimples. I've rolled out a wee ball of clay, and I'm going to use this toothpick piece right in between the cheeks. I'm going to push it in there to anchor the nose. So once I get that in there, I'll pop that little clay ball on top, and we're good to go here. I want him to have hands, so I'm going to give him wee candy corn hands. So I roll a short log of clay, rounding it on both ends. I cut it right down the center, giving me almost the perfect wee candy corn shapes. I mean, how good is that, right? Very little fussing. I'm just going to smooth out the bottom a wee bit. They're going to go right here where his mouth will be after he's dried and painted. I'm going to let him sit overnight to dry. Okay, so he's well dry now and ready to paint. I'll start in the center with Ceramcoat Pumpkin, and I'm going to give this 2 coats. And I paint his hands to look like candy corns too. So the center will get 2 coats of pumpkin on these little guys too. The bottom will get 2 coats of Folk Art Daybreak yellow, and the same thing for his hands. So tell me, what's your feeling on candy corn? Yay or nay? I'm a nay. But my mom loved it. To me, it's just way too sweet. It's not my thing. And of course the top will get 2 coats of Ceramcoat white. Here I'm using the back of a paintbrush to dot the whites of his eyes. So I'm going to go just above the cheeks. He's going to get a charcoal dot for his surprised mouth. There we go. Before I do anything else, I pulled out my floating medium, and let's shade this fella. I prep my brush with the medium, that's this clear gel here. I'm going to side load with Americana Cadmium Orange by scooping up the paint onto the corner of my brush. I stroke it on my plate to blend the paint with the medium, giving me a gradient of color. It's darkest at the paint corner of my brush and fades as it moves toward the middle of the bristles. Placing the paint corner of my brush where I want the darkest shadow, I stroke in my shading, right along that orange line. I reload my brush as needed, and I'm going to float the bottom too. And let's float over his cheeks and nose while we're at it. And of course I'm going to do his hands as well. I'll float the white sections with Ceramcoat Calypso Orange. I'm doing the exact same thing. I loaded the brush the same way, and we're just going to float right along this edge. Anywhere where I think it would look good, basically. Anything that I do to him, I'm going to repeat that on his wee hands. Right, moving right along. I'm going to float the bottom section with Ceramcoat Pumpkin. This is the same color that I painted the center of him, so it gives a nice ombre effect. You know what I'm saying? Back to his eyes. I'm going to dip dot them with Ceramcoat Parsley for his irises. Give him a nice green iris. A dot of charcoal gray right in the center for his pupils. And white dot highlights for his eyes slightly to the left at the top. And you're going to want to let these dots dry in between. You don't want to try to go over top of one wet dot. with another one. That'd be a mess. I'll boop the center of his cheeks and his nose with cadmium orange dots, and they're going to get white highlights as well. With a detail brush, I'll outline the right side of his eye with Hippo Gray. And we'll give him surprised eyebrows, as well as a hippo outline for his mouth. I do hippo lines between the color sections. I feel like this will tie him in with the illustrations that I'm going to be using later, more aligned with that style. You feel me? Pounce a top coat of Mod Podge over him to seal him before I attach his hands. I'm using Fabri-Fix to adhere his hands by his mouth so that it looks like he's gasping in shock at getting bit. Poor guy. You know I usually use 3-in-1 glue, but I haven't been able to get it. But Fabri-Fix, any kind of fabric glue really, is a good alternative. I don't know if you noticed, but I added a white stroke highlight to his mouth. I felt it needed something. Know what I'm saying? He kind of, I don't know, needed a little more definition. We'll put him aside for the mo. I'm going to give my cigar box a quick, loose coat of Ceramcoat charcoal, and I'm going to paint the entire surface. I tape the inner sides of the box with painter's tape so that I don't get any white paint on there. I'll give the inside surface 2 coats of white. And while I have the white paint on the go, I'll paint 3 white checks on each of the outer sides. I'm not measuring. These are very loose. I like it to look handmade. So, I mean, you could use tape if, you know, you want it to be exact, but I'm winging it here. Then I added a smaller pumpkin stripe to the right of the white stripe, and I'm going to do a hippo stripe to the left of the white stripe. Okay, now let's float the inside edges with pumpkin. So I'm going to load my brush the exact same way, and we're just going to float right around the inside edge. I like to start with the long sides first. I'm going to do one and then the other, and then I'll come back and do the shorter sides. This gives the floating medium a wee bit of time to dry so that it doesn't erase the previous float that I just laid down. It kind of works as an eraser. Well, you've seen me do that. But here we go, we'll do the other long side, and then real quick, the short sides. So while I have the pumpkin paint on my brush, I'm going to do some cross hatching here right in the center. Well, really pretty much all over that inner surface. It's just kind of slapdash strokes. This is going to help with the aging look and make it look a little older, a little aged. Right, so everything I just did with the pumpkin paint, I'm going to repeat that with Hippo. I'll go around the edges, float in some shading, and then we'll do some cross hatching in the center. Because the paint is blended with the medium on the brush, it gives it a translucence. So adding these cross hatches, it's very light. I can always lighten it up just by coming back in with just the medium, or I can darken it by going heavier with the paint. But I think I like it just like this. And I'll touch up any spots that have straight paint on them. So next, I'm going to back my images with some black cardstock to give it a little extra support, except for the cat, because he's going to be glued to the inside of the box, so he doesn't really need it. I'm going to attach the images to the cardstock just with, this is just an Elmer's glue stick. Once I get them attached to the black cardstock, I'm going to cut them out. I actually wind up cutting the words trick or treat apart too, making it 3 words. I added a couple of vinyl stars up here in the corner. You know, I like to keep those on hand, cut them out with my silhouette. Since the box looks very vintage, I decided that I'm going to need to grunge up Cornelius a wee bit. I'm just going to dry brush him lightly with some Hippo gray, just to tie him into the rest of the pieces. I think he's a little too bright and looks a little too new, so we're going to tone him down a wee bit. I make sure to offload the majority of the paint from my brush before I begin dry brushing. Just using a good old paper towel for this, I think that works best. I'm going to start along the edges, and then wherever else I feel it might need some grunging up, I'll hit that after. And you know the deal, I just reload my brush whenever it gets too dry. I think he looks good like that. I think that's perfect. Not too much, but enough to tie him into the background. Now these original images didn't have any green in them, but I wanted to pull some green into it, so I added little strokes here and there with Ceramcoat parsley paint. And now I'm going to add some green glitter by going over the green lines with Mod Podge, and then I'll sprinkle on some extra fine peridot glitter. Where better to start than with the cat's eyes, right? So now I'm just going to go into all the other pieces. Anywhere where there's green, I'll hit it with the Mod Podge and shake on some glitter. Now I'm going to add some black glitter to my pieces too. And I'm just swinging this anywhere where I feel like it might need it. That's what I'm doing. That's the best way, I think. Okay, so before I commit with glue, I just want to dry fit this to get an idea of where I want him positioned. I'm going to glue my cat in first. I'm using Fabri-Fix to glue him to the back here. Now I'm going to secure Cornelius in the corner here. I'm going to use both Fabri-Fix and a dot of hot glue to make sure he's well stuck. You can see the cat's licking his chops, so I guess he's the one that took the chunk out of Cornelius's head. Liking it so far. To give the text some dimension, I glued wood blocks to the back of them, and I'm just going to hot glue them right into place. I cut them apart because I thought it would look better if they were spread out more like this. You know what I'm saying? Fill in some of that negative space there. To trim the edge of the box, I'm going to use some of this tinsel garland, and I'm just going to hot glue it right around the surface. Now, I'm sure you realize I was really tempted to use some festooning here, but it would have been too much, so I think this worked out nicely. Now I'm just going to add the Brock's banner across the top, and then I'll add the Goblin Goodies to the left of that. I added some faux candy to the bottom left corner just under the cat. I didn't get that on camera, but you'll see it in the final reveal. So let's take a look. I think this turned out really cute. I love using old advertisements and images to make dioramas and mixed media pieces. Let me know what you think. I want to thank Traci and Morena for hosting. Please be sure to check out their channels. You'll find links in the description box. And please check out all of the other creators who are participating. We have many talented people, as you probably know. We all love Halloween, and they all have amazing ideas. So you're going to want to check that out. The link will be in the description box as well. And there will be a list of my supplies. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And all that good stuff. Stay creative, my friends. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Up all night with Monica.